Hey everybody, it's Crystal D. Smith here again, and thank you so much for tuning in to my channel. I wish that I could say that today I was bringing you something humorous, but I'm bringing you something rather serious instead, but something that's extremely important. And this video is all about things you need to know if you have a family member that's depressed. The reason I'm making this video is because Desi Alexander Hall, who was like a younger brother to me, committed suicide in the early hours of March 8th, 2018. Desi was about a month away from his 24th birthday. Desi never openly communicated with words that he was struggling. He never communicated that he was hurting. He never communicated that he was sad. He never really communicated much about his emotions at all. He left no note, and unfortunately, we'll never really know why he decided that life was so hard and so not worth it that he needed to take his own life. And that's a really hard thing to live with when you are a family member who's surviving someone who died of suicide. The statistics are overwhelming. Suicide is only an increasing problem. Mental illness is extremely misunderstood. It's not talked about very much. And it's something that people feel embarrassed to talk about. It's something that I imagine people are shamed to talk about. It still has this gigantic stigma associated with it, and it really shouldn't. At the time, of course, it was complete shock in the beginning. The first emotion you feel is just, you don't know what to feel, you're in shock. And all we kept saying was, we didn't see the signs. Looking back at it now, all I can say was, there were a lot of signs. But it was signs that were not obvious. And in most cases of suicide, the signs never are obvious. Suicide typically occurs because someone doesn't communicate how they feel. Because mental illness, it affects you. You see things differently in the world. You feel things differently in the world. You experience them differently. You hear things differently. So whereas if you're not struggling with depression or another type of mental illness, you may see things this way, but somebody with depression or mental illness may see them this way. So to them, what they did was right. What they did was the only option. You may be surprised to know how many people have had horrible things to say about what he did. A lot of times they said, well, he was selfish. And maybe that's true, but I'd like to also think it's really selfish for everyone to want you to be in this world if you really don't want to. I think the big challenge with depression, and where it really makes us disconnect what we see, is this question here. Do you really want to die, or do you just want a different life? And I think that maybe depression makes us think that the first option is the only option and the real option. But the truth is I think a lot of people want a different life. I think a lot of people go through times when they feel so helpless and so misunderstood and so unheard that they think they should just waste away into nothing. Another thing that I've heard from people is that he was a coward. Actually, no, he wasn't a coward. To plan out and actually execute shooting yourself in the face makes you pretty brave, if you ask me. That's something a lot of people don't have the cojones to do. And while I do not agree with what he did, and I am not supporting it in any way, those people are not cowards. Because you and I both know that most of us lack the capacity to be able to do that. We've never been to the point that we've wanted to do that or tried to do that. And some people just said, well, was he on drugs? Was he drinking? Did he have a learning disability? No, no, and no. His toxicology report confirmed this, but he was never a partier. He never tried drugs, not even weed. He didn't really enjoy drinking. Every now and again, for a special occasion, he would have one of those god-awful sweet apple cidery beers because he really didn't like anything else. There was nothing wrong with him that you could clearly really see on the outside. It's all the really small changes in somebody's behavior that will clue you in. It's them maybe being a little more manic. It's them maybe being a little more antisocial. It's them maybe talking differently or talking less or possibly even talking more. The truth is that depression doesn't always look like one thing. Mental illness doesn't always look like one thing. So looking back, it's really easy to see the signs that you couldn't see before. And maybe the reason that we don't see it is because we don't want to see it. Because truth is one of the hardest human concepts to process. Because we don't want to believe that certain things could be true. We don't want to believe that our loved ones could be so sad that they'll take their own life. We don't want to believe that our loved ones could be so disturbed that they could do these god-awful things people do these days, like shoot up schools or massacre people at a concert in Vegas or go on a killing spree playing a video game tournament. We don't want to believe these things are true, especially when they're done by people that we love. We don't want to believe that the people that we love are victims of depression. We don't want to believe that we are victims of depression. We don't want to believe that people that we love are capable of taking their own lives or the lives of others. But sometimes that's just truth. And that's a truth that's incredibly hard to swallow. So the message that I want everyone to hear, if you have a family member who's ever been depressed, or if you've ever been depressed, is to be receptive to the truth, as hard as it is and as much as it sucks. Other pieces of advice I want you to hear are that you should never be afraid to talk about it. We have to talk about it. We don't talk about it enough. Every time you asked Desi how he was doing, the default response you received was, "I'm fine." It's okay to dig a little deeper to the people that you love and say, "Are you sure that you're fine?" Because if you don't communicate what's wrong, people don't know how to help you. They don't know how you're suffering. People asked me the first 2 months how I was doing since we lost him, and I said okay. Quite frankly, that was a bullcrap answer. It was a default response because I didn't know how to say, "Hey, I'm suffering. I could really use it if you would just listen for 5 minutes. I could really use it if you would just tell me something good. I could really use it if you would just let me know that I'm appreciated because I'm suffering." Because we're afraid to drag people down. We're afraid to be judged. We're afraid to admit to ourselves that we're struggling. I've struggled immensely since losing him. I even struggled to the point that I was only a few steps away from taking my own life. And that doesn't sound rational at all, to be in that position and say, "Well, dummy, didn't you just lose somebody to that?" Yes. And what that caused was a severe depression that made me not see the world the way I see it today, as a more rational and far less depressed person. I worked really hard to work on things on my diet and on the way that I thought, and I got on Zoloft, which I'm still on today, because I was able to finally admit to myself, this caused a domino effect and I'm struggling. The truth wasn't easy to hear, but it was the truth. And the truth is a lot of people that you love are suffering, and you may not ever know. They may not know that they can talk to you about it, which is why it's so important that we talk about it. It's so important that we ask the hard questions. It's so important that we go deeper and say, "Hey, are you sure that you're okay?" It's so important that we teach our children that you are allowed to have emotions and you are allowed to have feelings and that you are allowed to talk about them. It's so important that we not only say, "I love you," that we show someone we love them. Words are meaningless without action. I don't need to tell you that I love you or respect you. You should be able to tell from my actions. And those simple things aren't a lot of effort. It doesn't take much effort to be a really good, loving, respectful human being. And we need to give that to one another more often. The last time I told Desi that I was proud of him is when he graduated high school. And that was years ago. Maybe I didn't tell him that I was proud of him enough. I know I told him that I loved him regularly. In fact, the last time I told him that I loved him before he took his life was the night of the Super Bowl, when I had him over for a Super Bowl party. That's the last time I saw him. That's the last time I told him that I loved him. And I don't know if it would have changed the way he felt if I would have said I love you more, or if I would have said I'm proud of you more. But maybe if I'd paid a little more attention, maybe if I'd asked harder questions, and maybe if I had been somebody who talked about these things so openly before, maybe, just maybe, things could have been different. But me sitting here, getting in my head and contemplating this potentially being my fault, or me having the kind of ability to change it, doesn't really help. And I don't want you to feel that way when you watch this video, but I do want you to understand that I do truly believe that there are a lot of really small things that we can do that don't take a lot of time or effort to save people's lives. And that's what's so incredibly important. So just pay attention, ask questions, talk, and be transparent, be genuine, be authentic. I can only hope that we are able to make this problem less of an issue, that we can take these statistics and we can shrink them. I hope that no one out there has to lose someone to suicide that they love, and I hope no one out there has to be that close to doing it themselves. But I know that the truth is we'll never live in a world where that's the case. So until that time comes, because it may not ever come, just please do these simple things. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, if you'd like to catch videos like this and many others, click on the subscribe button. If I've helped you today, please make sure to like or place a comment in this video. And if you need to talk to someone, please reach out, get help, talk about it.